Welcome to another Q&A for the Canine Conversation School. I added this additional Q&A to catch up on some of the questions that have been submitted. So we're going to get started with the question that Melaine submitted. It's a three-part question. So we'll start with part number one, which is about food. So her question is, I have kibble guilt. I'd like to give her more whole foods, but I don't want her to start refusing kibble or thinking our food is hers. How can I incorporate whole food into her diet without spoiling her or breaking the bank? Awesome question. Okay, couple of things to think about here. If your dog is refusing food, kibble or not, oftentimes it's because they're getting too much. They don't need any more. So they're going, I'm good, they're full. So check your dog's physical state. Are they carrying more weight on their body than they should be? If you run your hands down their rib cage, can you faintly feel a rib or two, or is there a lot of padding there? So that's a quick check that you can look at to see, am I overfeeding my dog? Additional reasons why a dog might start refusing food is if there is a health concern. So pay attention to that. Pay attention to their poops. They should look normal and solid and be consistent. And so if you keep an eye on the regularity of that and what they look like, you'll be able to pick up on health concerns much faster than if you don't pay attention to those things. So that's a little side tangent on that. But so one of the ways that I include whole foods, so now I used to only feed kibble. Now I feed raw to my dog. And I actually go back and forth between sometimes I feed him raw, sometimes I feed him kibble for the purpose of when I travel with my dog. Traveling with raw food is very challenging. It's hard to keep meat frozen while you're driving long distances and things like that. So I want the ease of kibble. So using a high quality kibble, not all kibbles are the same. So I can make a resource for you guys to take a look at some different kibble options and what's better or worse. Quick tip on that, if you're going with a kibble, the first 4 ingredients on the bag are the most important ingredients, and they should be a protein. Fish, meat, meat-based. If they throw in a carb like a potato, rice, wheat, whatever it might be, those are fillers, and that's going to be the primary ingredient essentially that your dog is eating. So what you'll notice, and I've switched many dogs over the years from a kibble diet to a raw diet, their poops are going to shrink when they go to a raw diet because their bodies are actually utilizing the nutrients and processing the food and using it for the purpose of energy and health. And so there's less to come out. There's less waste versus with kibble. There is a lot of fillers in there and their body can't utilize that like it needs to. So it just goes right through and your dog is getting less nutritional value. So that's something just to be aware of, where if you switch from kibble to raw, their poops should shrink and they should biodegrade at a much faster rate. So that's a good thing. And that's just something that you can take a look at. If you're going to feed a combination of kibble and raw, that's not a bad thing. What I recommend is a meal of kibble, give them the chance to digest that, and then a meal of raw, or a day of kibble and then a day of raw, because those foods are going to digest at different rates through their system. And so when we combine kibble and raw in the same meal, that can cause some digestive upset. Not for all dogs, but for some. And so if we want to help their system with the processing, I would just say keep those separate. There is a book called The Forever Dog by Rodney Habib and Karen Becker, I believe, and they're both veterinarians. And they wrote this book specifically about diet and the impacts of health. And because they're in the veterinarian industry, they have seen over the decades of their work that the dogs on kibble versus the dogs on raw, the different types of health concerns and the longevity of those dogs. And I may be getting these percentages off a little bit, but it's close. In the book, it talks about If you have a dog that's primarily on a kibble diet and you feed them 20% of their diet fresh, raw, if you were to add 20% of raw into their diet, their risk of cancer drops by about 80%. That's huge. So I highly encourage it. So even if you can't go full blown raw, because it can get expensive, especially if you have large breeds or multiple dogs, if you can just get some raw into their diet paired with the kibble that you have, that's going to have massive positive effects on your dog's health. So, to the aspect of Melane's question about you don't want your dog Banana, I love Banana. You don't want your dog Banana to think that your food is hers. So let's talk about that. Feeding scraps isn't necessarily a bad thing. You want to be strategic about what type of human food you are giving your dog. Avoid things that are heavily seasoned. Avoid things that are toxic to dogs, like grapes would be an example of that. You can Google pretty quickly what foods, fruits and vegetables and whatnot are toxic to dogs. Anything that's overly processed is also something I would recommend avoiding. But that being said, there are lots of things you can give your dog. Fruits like apples, bananas, berries. A lot of berries like blueberries would be great for your dogs. For vegetables, I guess technically cucumber might be a fruit, but cucumber, broccoli is fine. Potatoes, like sweet potatoes, that's fine too. Those are high in carbs. So just like with human diets, you want to be aware of not giving too much of certain things for their digestive system. Strawberries, my dog loves strawberries. Now, when you're giving your dog these things or scraps of meat or eggshells, those are packed full of nutrients. Put them in your dog's bowl. So if you're feeding by hand from the table, you are now creating an association of when you're having your meal, they might get something. So that's going to encourage them to start getting maybe a little bit pushy at that time. So if you make the ritual and the routine of when you're meal prepping in the kitchen or you're eating your meal at the table, that is not the time to give your dog the scraps. Wait until after you're done and put it in their bowl and include that in their mealtime. So that's going to disconnect the association of the activity of you cooking in the kitchen or sitting at the table as an opportunity for them to grab some snacks from you. So that will help her not connect those dots in that way. Hopefully that answers your question with clarity. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know. Other ways to add in raw without breaking the bank. So there's different brands and there's different things. So there's freeze-dried raw, there's frozen raw, and there's other treats you can give your dog, like a turkey neck or a chicken neck that you can get in the freezer section of a lot of pet stores. Not all pet stores are the same. So your sort of big corporate PetSmart, Petco, they're going to have maybe a little more limited options when it comes to your raw foods. One thing you want to look at is avoid flaxseed. Flaxseed is a filler and it also can influence and interrupt hormones for dogs, especially. It's not natural to their diet as a species. So there are a handful of raw brands out there that do add flaxseed in there under the guise of the omegas and things like that. That's why they want to put it in there, but it's actually a filler. So avoid those. But a lot of your other boutique-y kind of pet stores here in Texas, that would be Hollywood Feed. In Washington, that would be something like Mud Bay. I'm sure there's others. They will typically have higher quality options for kibble and for raw that you can take a look at. The two raw brands that I'm a big fan of is Primal and Tucker's. So Tucker's is a little more affordable, and they come in these prepackaged patties that you can freeze. Well, you can thaw. They come frozen. You can thaw them for your dog. So the prep time is very low and it's easy. So one of the things that I do when I'm feeding my dog Tucker's, the evening before, I will pull out a frozen patty, put it in my fridge so it thaws overnight in the fridge. And then the next day I give it to my dog. So that's an easy way to incorporate raw. And then other things too, you can get single ingredient treats. So like sardines they come in a little bag and they're little dried fish, beef lung, chicken hearts, things like that. And I was going to say one other thing about, freeze dried raw. So you can find in some of the aisles of your pet store, certain dog food brands that are mixed in with the kibbles that are freeze dried raw. So they're not kibble, but they're dry and they're not like raw meat. So that can be nice and easy. That's a great travel option as well. I often will use those as treats. So I will supplement if I'm going to be doing some fun training with my dog, I'll get some freeze-dried raw food and use those as treats. Which might mean that I cut back their breakfast and dinner portions a little bit if I'm working them for food during that day. So that's another way. Those foods can be a little pricier. So look at your local stores or chewy.com and see what's available to you and go from there. Okay, part 2 of Melane's question. Quick and easy things I can do all day to help her feel secure in my leadership of our pack. That is touching on relationship dynamics and communication. So how you interact with your dog during the day does give her signals of, are you competent? Are you in charge? Are you leading? Are you guiding in a way that makes sense? So, I mean, there could be a million little things that we do for that, but I would say a couple things that could be helpful. Consistency and setting boundaries. A boundary is something that your dog definitely needs. Boundaries around the house. They need to understand what the rules are. It could be something like, don't get on the couch. Stay out of the kitchen while I cook. You can go anywhere in the house. You just can't go in the baby's room. You can't go in the master bedroom. You can't go in the laundry room. Have off-limit areas. When we go out to the backyard to let you run around and go to the bathroom, there's a ritual at the door of having you stay back and be respectful and calm before I open the door and invite you to go out. You're not going to go bonkers and jumping and spinning and crazy to get the back door open. So little rituals like that, where you're having these conversations and you have rules and structure in place for your dog to abide by. Those things are going to be really helpful in reminding your dog to follow your direction and your guidance. Additional things that are really good to consider is purposeful affection. So giving your dog attention and affection when they have done something to earn it or when they are doing something that you like, not just because they're cute, adorable, and fluffy. So your attention is currency. Your attention is affirming whatever they're doing. So if they're being pushy for your attention and then you give them affection, then you're encouraging more of that behavior. One of the quotes that I like to say is, you get what you pet. So if your dog were to come and jump on you while you're on your laptop and, they're getting your attention and you go, oh, hi, sweetie, and you pet them, and then, okay, you need to go, I'm busy. You've just affirmed that behavior of being a little bit invasive of your space, demanding attention, and you gave it. So you pet that. So you're going to get more of that. And so then it can build into or evolve into a dog that pesters you all the time. And then you get frustrated and you're like, oh my gosh, stop, go, knock it off. And then they won't. So pay attention to where you're giving your attention, because you're going to get more of those things. That will help in helping your dog feel secure in your leadership as well, because you are being clear and intentional. Part number 3, how to make walks more interactive and satisfying for her without requiring me to find a different walking route. Great question. Okay, so this is where we want to think about things from the dog's perspective. If you go on the same walk every day, that can become very boring. So looking for the little ways you can change what you do. Point out smells along the way. And you can kind of get strategic with this because dogs, their nose is their primary sense. So that's how they see the world. That's the thing that they want to engage with most. So if you start interacting with that and encouraging that, that's going to help the fulfillment aspect of things. So as you're walking, let's say you're passing by a mailbox or a fire hydrant, you can actually tell your dog, hey, come check this out, sniff this, because I'm sure some other dog has peed on it or something like that. There's a smell here. I can't smell it. I can't see it, but I know my dog is capable of it. So as a reminder, dogs have up to 300 million olfactory receptors in their nose, and we humans have only up to about 6 million. So that's a massive difference. So their capacity for smelling scent is way beyond what we can even really imagine. So use that to your advantage and just assume like she's going to pick up on something interesting here and I can just sort of lead her to things, which makes you more relevant, includes you in the process, and gives you some street cred, because when you start pointing out things to your dog that has cool scent on it, they're going to go, wow, you smelled that too? That's pretty awesome. So that's a great way to keep it interesting and interactive. Find things to smell. You could find a feather on the ground or a rock that looks interesting, or pick up a leaf and, offer it to your dog. I do that all the time where I'll just, pick up a random leaf and I'll be like, hey, you want to sniff it? And my dog sniffs it and I'm like, good job. Okay, let's go. So just encouraging you to think about their nose, think about all the different things that you can encourage them to smell and interact with them that way. Additionally, you can look for things that you can ask your dog to jump on and climb on and just sort of not just do a boring sidewalk path. You can be on the same route, but just change it up a little bit. So if there's a big boulder rock, have your dog jump on it. Have them put just 2 paws on it. If there's a park bench that you pass by, have them jump on that. Have them go underneath it. Have them, any type of object that is safe to interact with, that they can climb on, go under, or put their 2 paws on. That would be a great way to keep it interesting as well. Or even like, let's say you're on a trail and sometimes they have those pylons to keep vehicles from going down the trail. Just have her sniff it, have her put her paws up on it. If it's big enough, depending on the pylon and the size of your dog, you can lift them up and put them on it, have them do a sit on it so they're balancing. Take a photo, right? Have fun. So get creative with the objects and the things that are in your environment and start hunting for those things. Instead of just having the human boring mindset of, we're walking, we've got this route, we're just going to go get it done. Dogs don't really understand that. When they go on walks or they migrate and they move, there's usually a purpose for scavenging, hunting, or getting to a certain point for a purpose, but it's often more about exploring the world. So explore with them. Great questions. Let me know if you have any other questions on that. I'm going to get to our next question. All right, this one is from Gio. He asks, what is the easiest trick to teach a dog to get her energy out? I tried teaching her how to find a hidden toy, but can't seem to get her motivated enough to search. Tried peanut butter filled toys and she doesn't care too much. Want to keep her excited and stimulated while I'm working. Okay, so I happen to know you work from home, so you're home with her a lot. And I know also that she might be getting a little bit more food than she needs to. So that's step number 1, is you can cut back her calorie intake. That's going to help if you're using food-based toys. That's going to help increase her motivation because she's now at the appropriate amount of calories, which keeps her wanting more food when it's appropriate, versus her being overfed and it's disinteresting to her. So that's part 1. The other thing I will say is the hide and seek game with toys and food in the house is a super fun one. And it's a really great option to work their nose and work their brain in an indoor space. So you're on the right track with that. I would say you might be asking too much of her. It is a complex game. It's a very advanced skill. If the dog has never actually really hunted or used their nose in that way, because it takes a lot of brain power and it is a skill. If you go straight into making it too difficult, they lose interest because they don't get it yet, and it's defeating to them. And so if they can't figure it out, then they give up. So I would say for Hayes, you're definitely going to want to start bare minimum. It's going to feel like you're not even playing hide and seek. So I'll explain this because I had to do this with my dog Willard. He was never introduced prior to living with me to working for his food. It was always just given to him. So he didn't have to put in effort. And this is very common for most domestic dogs. They are not taught to hunt for their food. And they're not really taught to hunt at all because they don't have to for survival when they're living in a domestic situation. So we're tapping into their natural instinct of scavenging and hunting. And because this is a skill that they have no practice in, we have to start with the ABCs. So what this looks like is for Willard, I started using his meals at first. So I'm gonna take a step back and explain why I would use meals versus treats. You need food for survival. You need that caloric intake for your body to function and survive. Treats are on top of their basic meals, and that's more like the concept of dessert. You can survive without dessert. You don't need that. It's nice to have, but we don't need it for survival. So ultimately, while it might initially on the surface look like most dogs are more excited about treats and more willing to work for treats, when we are starting to increase the difficulty of what we're asking them to do for the treats, you're probably going to hit a point, unless you have a seriously high drive dog that loves working for food, you're going to hit a point where your dog goes, it's not worth it. I'm out. So how do you overcome that? Having them learn to work for their core meals. That is something that they actually need to survive. So when I've worked with dogs over the decade plus of my career, and if I need them to work for food for the purpose of helping them through training, if they're not food motivated, I start teaching them the only way you eat food, period, is by working for it. And if you choose to refuse it, that's fine. It's still going to show up twice a day under these conditions. Morning and evening, you will get the opportunity to put in effort to earn your food. If you choose not to put in the effort, then you're choosing to forego that meal. That is your choice. And so let's say the dog is like, I'm not going to work for that, and just walks away. Put breakfast away, try again at dinner time. Dinner time rolls around, you bring out the food, you start asking them to work for it. And if they go, I usually get it for free, so I'm just going to wait and you'll give it to me. So it's like, well, sorry, dude, that's not how this is working anymore. Put it away. Tomorrow we'll try again. Breakfast comes around, bring the food out, and now they're a little hungrier. Most dogs will go, yeah, I'll work for that a little bit. So then you can start that process. At that point, some dogs will work for about half of their meal portion and then be like, I'm good. And so that's the process, usually for the first 3 days. It often takes about 3 days to teach a dog a new expectation with food. You have to work for it. When they're used to having it handed on a silver platter, they can get a little bit spoiled, a little bit entitled. So changing that and being strict to it, even though you might feel bad, don't feel bad, because out in nature, every single animal, dogs included, have to put forth a lot of effort in order to hopefully eat. It takes a lot of effort to hunt down, chase down, and capture a rabbit, for example. And that's not even a guarantee with all of that energy usage that they will actually earn the meal. So us still offering it twice a day is oftentimes more than what nature would provide. So keep that in mind. You are not harming your dog. You are not being mean to your dog. You're actually helping your dog in the process of reaching a greater level of fulfillment and happiness. Because every single time I have worked a dog through their entitlement to their food and taught them how to work for it, they all love it and their quality of life skyrockets. So that's why we use food versus treats, is because you need food to survive. You don't need dessert. And if you have a low food drive dog, this is the way to build that food drive. Okay, so now that we've accomplished that with Hayes, I'm going to explain what I did with Willard, because this is step by step exactly what you can do with her. And this should get her to the point where you can evolve her skill set and grow her skill set to more advanced hunting around the house, which is going to be great for her mental stimulation and fulfillment. So with Willard, I used part of his food. In this case, it was dried beef lung. You can use kibble. You can use freeze-dried raw, whatever works for you, whatever that normal part of their meal is. Because he gets fed raw and all those things, that's part of what he got. So I started by asking him, and I know that Hayes knows this too, to go on to place. So pick a designated location to bring your dog there and have them stay there. Sit, stay, down, stay, place. All of those are appropriate. You're going to take the piece of food, show them that you have it, and then you're going to hide it in plain sight a few feet away. So I put it like right next to my couch on the floor. And my dog gets to watch me do this. And then what I do is I go back to my dog, and then I'll give the hand signal and I'll say, find it. And I'll literally point to it. The dog goes over there, the dog eats it, and then I throw a party. Yay, what a good job. You did so good. You found it. And then, okay, let's do it again. We go back to place. I take another piece of food. I go to the same spot. Find it. They go find it. They eat it. I throw a party. Do that 3 or 4 times. Take a break. So what this is going to do is teach your dog that, wow, that was easy and super fun, and you liked that I did that. So it's going to encourage that behavior. If you have a dog that's like, what are you doing? This is weird. Just do it a couple of times, take a break, wait for 15 to 60 minutes, and then do it again 2 or 3 times. Same location. As you get to a point where you see your dog going from hesitant or uncertain to the energy picks up and there's more focus, instead of her sauntering over there like, okay, I guess I'll pick this up off the ground. Maybe she's more like beelining to it and excited about it. So that is her drive. You're building her drive and her interest in engaging in this game. So you're going to see her excitement and her going, oh, we did this before. This was kind of cool. Now I know what we're doing. I'm going to do it better. So that's how you build skill sets. So once you do that, 3 different rounds of that, where you're setting it up the exact same way, then you're going to set up the next round where you're putting her on place and you're going to a new location and setting the food down in plain sight, going through the same process. Do that a few times, then take a break. Then the next time you come out for a round, you're going to toggle between the 2 places. So one time you set it here, next time you set it here, and you repeat. The other thing you're going to start doing as she starts getting more motivated to going to it on her own, whereas at the beginning you might have to walk over with her and lead her to it and encourage her to get it before you throw your party. Then if she's starting to go more on her own, I want you to start hanging back a little bit to let her finish it by herself, to have her go to it on her own, so that she's more independent. Because ultimately, as we build this skill set, we can go from providing support and help to, hey, you've got this on your own, go figure it out. That's going to build towards her being able to search and hunt independently and not expect you to be there with her the whole time. There were a few times with Willard when I started expecting a little bit more of him. Once I got to a point where, okay, he would go straight to it. Now I'm going to hide it just out of sight, tell him to go find it. And so now he's kind of got to look for it. He would give up. He would be like, I don't see it. And then he would look at me like, help me. And I would just stand there and wait and be like, you got it, go find it. And then he would look again and then eventually he would find it. Now, if he really got stuck, like he genuinely couldn't find it, then I would give him a hint. I'd get a little closer. I might point to the general area, ask him to find it again, just to help him out. So that took probably a week of having this be how he earns his breakfast, for him to start really picking up on the game and enjoying it. And I had to infuse my excitement, even though it's like, okay, this is really easy. You should be able to get that. I just made a big deal about it every single time. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier with Melane's question. Your attention is currency. So your attention and your affection, they care about how you feel and what you think. So use that to your advantage as you're shaping some of these behaviors. So that should get you started. Over time, you can just make little progressions of letting her be more independent, hiding it a little bit more with more difficulty, and pay attention to if she gets stuck or she gives up, it's too hard. Make it a little easier for several rounds, and then you can go back to making it harder. So that's your gauge. She will let you know where she's at with her skill set. And if you find that she's just not being successful, back it up, make it easier for a while. That will help you get to the point where whether you're using food or treats, food or toys, that you can build her drive. So if you're using toys, you can go through literally the same process of hiding it in plain sight, having her go get it, and then throwing a party when she picks up the ball or whatever it is. That's the part that's going to make her want to do it again. And then you can make it more difficult as you go. So slow and steady wins the race. Take your time with this. Don't try to rush through making it super hard. You will get there. Let her go through the problem solving and the difficulty of actually engaging her brain and engaging her nose. There's a lot of dogs that rely on their eyes because they haven't needed to use their nose. So we're actually teaching them to tap into using their primary skill set, their sense of smell. So pay attention to that as well. Is when you're hiding, is she just looking and going and getting it? And this is what you're going to see as you advance the game and you start hiding it just out of sight, is she might actually pass it a few times because she's just using her eyes. But then you'll hear her start engaging her nose. You'll hear the sniffing sounds, and then you'll see her kind of honing in on where the scent is coming from. So hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have any questions on that. You're on the right track. Just, build her food motivation, start super easy. Throw a big party for her when she's successful, even if you've literally led her to it, and then very, very slowly make it more difficult. Okay, your second question is, she's about to go into heartworm treatment and with no activity. What are things I can do that keeps her heart rate down, but also stimulates her brain while she's on no activity mode? Yeah, I would say exactly what we just talked about would be a phenomenal way to use her mental energy while keeping her body calmer. That's going to be probably one of the better options, is working on her problem solving through using scent. You can teach her other tricks and whatnot. And I would say working her for her meals is going to be mentally fulfilling. So that's a great way to, again, drain the brain, because dogs have, if you want to boil it down, they have two batteries of energy, two energy sources. One is physical energy and the other is mental energy. If you drain physical energy, so take your dog on a run, for example, they might get tired for a little bit, but then they still have all this mental energy because they didn't have to think very hard. And this is where you're like, I don't know what to do. I've exercised you, we played fetch or we went on a run and you're still wound up. That's because their mental energy is still full. So I can't tell you how many times I can work a dog for like 15 to 20 minutes with their brain, and they're physically not doing a whole lot of moving around, but mentally they're having to think and problem solve. They're knocked out, for like they're done. So if you think about it from a human perspective, it's the difference between, studying for an exam, and all of that mental effort. You can be sitting for hours and reading and studying and prepping for a test or prepping for something like that. And you're just drained because your brain is just mush. So that's the same type of experience that dogs have versus you could go on a run and then you still have energy for the day, right? Depending on your level of physical conditioning. So drain the brain, since you will not be able to drain the body because her heart rate has to stay down. So you're going to have to heavily rely on her thinking and processing. She's smart, so you're probably gonna come out of that time having learned a lot with her. You could even just teach her basic tricks. So this is where, again, having food motivation during this time for her is going to be really, really helpful. Because once she learns the concept of working for her meals, then you can use that to do a whole bunch of things. So teaching her the hunt game, the hide and seek hunt game, you could do things like shake a paw, lay down, spin in a circle, like turn around, take a bow, back up, walk backwards. And all of these are movement things, but they're slow, so they're not high cardio. And that she's really going to have to think about what she's doing in order to shape those behaviors. So I would say for you, step one is feed her the appropriate amount of calories to help build food motivation, and then start requiring her to work for her meals instead of just giving them to her in the bowl. So a couple of tips on that. You can still portion it out in the bowl and then just you're feeding her from the bowl as you're training. Or you can get a treat pouch, which makes it easier to just pop it in there and it wraps around your waist, kind of like a fanny pack. And then you have the food on her. You can still be hands-free, on you, and then you can be hands-free. And then as you go through your interactions with her, you can, reach basically in your pocket for that. So that's what I'd recommend. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. And we're going to wrap it up here. That was a lot of great information. And I will see you guys next time.